Good morning and welcome to the Environmental Echo. I am Paul Boyce, your host, and I am CEO and President of PWGC Consulting. And we're bringing you guys another fascinating guest and interesting topics to talk about today. We've got DuWayne Gregory, who's currently he's a councilman for the town of Babylon. So he's our first Babylon guest, and I'm real excited to have him. Also joining us, we have Charlie Bartha, who's been multiple times on the show. He's also one of our senior VPs in the engineering group, but also leads our business development efforts at PWGC. But before we dive into the subjects here, let's talk about how to get a hold of PWGC if you guys are interested. Best way to reach us is through our website, which is www.pwgrosser.com/podcast. So if you guys have ideas or thoughts on topics, guests, anything, the ideas or other thoughts that you want to bring up to our attention or things you liked or disliked with our podcast, we'd love to hear it. Just reach out to us through the podcast or through the website, and we'll get back to you guys as reasonably fast as possible, as we always do. So with that said, again, we've got DuWayne Gregory today, who is, as I said, he currently is the town of Babylon. He's a councilman, but before that, and this is how I got to know him, he was a Suffolk County legislator who was served as the majority leader and presiding officer during his 10 years in the office, which was fabulous. And he's the first person of color to be elected to these positions in the Suffolk County legislature. So again, tremendous accomplishment, and I'm glad to know him. DuWayne is a native Long Islander, and he takes great pride and he took great pride in leading the legislature. He worked to build an economy and environment to enable the working class to thrive. He's helped revitalize downtowns here in Suffolk County. He's invested in infrastructure and affordable housing, prioritized the fight against crime, and he's keeping quality higher education accessible to all, which, that is critical to the future of the island here. His career in public service has featured numerous landmark achievements that have included the formation of the Suffolk County Land Bank, which I did not know that, and that is something that's been very interesting, and PWGC has been involved with that as well. And that land bank, that helps put blighted properties back on the tax rolls for those of our listeners who do not know. Councilman Gregory has worked to create policies that inspire change, protect the rights of workers, and stimulated the local economy. In that spirit, he created the Charting the Course seminar series to facilitate communication between the business sector and local government. He played a key role in the development of the Marine Industry Revitalization Advisory Council, which we'll have to talk a little bit more about that one because that's new to me on your resume here, which that actually promotes and protects Suffolk's $1.6 billion marine industry, which, as an island, absolutely critically important to us, and his efforts have not gone unnoticed. In 2019, City and State recognized DuWayne as Long Island's top 100 influencers and also recognized him in its Color of Power list as one of the top black influencers in New York State, and that's quite an achievement. Very glad to hear that. And Councilman Gregory currently resides in Copeg with his wife and children, and as I said, also joining us today is Charlie. Welcome back, Charlie. Always good to have you. So with that said, with that intro, let's dive into our topic. So DuWayne, welcome.
Great. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Charlie. It's great to see you, and I'm excited to be here.
We're grateful to have you. So as a councilman with the town of Babylon now, can you tell me what are the most pressing environmental issues that are facing the town?
Yeah, it's it's interesting being back in the town of Babylon as a councilman. I worked there probably early 2000s, 2000 to 2002. I was the supervisor, special assistant, and I went off and I was a commissioner, deputy commissioner, and did various roles, and went off to the county to do some work. And it's been great to come back and to be in my hometown and to be a councilman and work with Supervisor Schaefer and my colleagues on the town board to do some tremendous things. We have some really great staff that are really, an environment, whether you're in Babylon or Riverhead or anywhere in between, is an important issue. So we have some tremendous staff that are doing some wonderful things. So what we've identified is climate change and sea level rise and nitrogen pollution, potential oceanic and estuary acidification, water quality issues, and loss of eelgrass as some of our issues that we find most pressing.
Those are very common topics to the island, and certainly not just unique to Babylon.
Right.
But what are you guys specifically doing to tackle some of these things?
Yeah, so we've been very proactive as it relates to resiliency planning. we've received a significant amount of funding from the New York Rising program and carried out stormwater and bridge and culvert projects. We've added redundancy to our infrastructure systems, such as emergency generators, installing check valves on our coastal areas to address sunny day flooding. We have 3 certified floodplain managers on staff. They help ensure compliance with flood and resiliency standards. The town also has staff that sits on both I'm learning some of these acronyms, SSER, the South Shore Estuary Reserve Council, and Technical Advisory Committee, also known as TAC, I guess, for you environmental folks. We've installed, and Charlie and I were talking about this prior to, install sewers in Wyandanch, in the Wyandanch community, which is going to have a great water quality benefit to the Carls River watershed. So there's a lot of different things that we've done and looking to do, and so we're being proactive, and we're trying our best.
People tend to think about Suffolk County's environment. They tend to think the East End.
Right.
But Babylon has so many features there. And as steward of that, we were talking before about the beaches.
Right.
Tend not to think of that. And I was fortunate to work on a couple of projects at Overlook and Cedar. Mm-hmm. And great facilities.
Let's not forget Gilgo.
Yeah.
Right.
Paul's the surfer.
DuWayne, I'm going to have you. I'm down there. I don't want to say every day, but certainly every week I'm down there.
Yeah, no, the town is really blessed to have some great amenities for our residents and for folks who are actually, come to our facilities as well. And, so it's we've recognized as the town government that, people want to benefit for their taxes, but also we live on the island, make sure that they can go to the beach and enjoy the beach and some of the parks that we have.
I know the Captree Boat Basin, I believe it's a state facility, but is that within the township of Babylon?
That is in Islip.
Islip.
Yes. So.
Do you work in conjunction with Islip and Oyster Bay on the different aspects of?
We do, and that's what. It's important on several levels, with bipartisanship, understanding, having leaders that understand that you got to take a regional approach to things. The waters don't have boundaries like our maps do. So when we work together in collaboration, whether it would be with the town of Oyster Bay or the town of Islip with Angie Carpenter, we work together on various things to ensure that our aligned interests are being protected and that we're, making sure that we're doing the right things for our constituents, our mutual constituents. And we collaborate all the time. Yeah.
That's interesting. I've been involved with the project with the town of Oyster Bay down at Tobay Beach, which West Gilgo is the next beach over, and there was sort of some shared water services going on there where we had to, speak with the town of Babylon when we were doing our project. So, I have seen the collaboration, firsthand. So it is good when I see, governments and cross-county governments working together for a common cause.
Yeah, no, it's important. I did something similar when I was at the legislature, the presiding officer after Superstorm Sandy. Charlie may remember I put together what we call the Superstorm Sandy Review Task Force. And government's notorious for saying, okay, that problem's gone, it's over with, on to the next thing. But I guess from my military background, we were always, we have a scenario or training exercise, and we will always have an after-action review afterwards. Okay, what was the plan? How did we execute the plan? And what can we do to make sure that we do better next time? So my purpose was we went through this. There was certainly a lot of challenges with Superstorm Sandy, but what have we learned? And we certainly learned a lot, but how are we encapsulating that so that we don't make mistakes the next time a weather event like that happens? And so the task force had public hearings and put a report together and communicated with state agencies, local towns and villages across the county. But we also reached out to Nassau County and got them involved. Because it's not, Superstorm Sandy wasn't a Suffolk problem or issue. No. It's a regional issue, and so it's important to have that type of vision and leadership and so you can get things done in a productive manner, I think.
Babylon was particularly hard hit by Sandy. Are there still projects ongoing related to resiliency?
Yeah, so we're working with the Army Corps of Engineers, elevating homes in the 100-year floodplain.
Is this like down like Copeg or
Yeah,
I know
so
the
like
village of Lindenhurst for
the South Shore, so Lindenhurst, Amity Harbor,
Yes.
which is, Copeg areas, village of Amityville areas. I remember going into the village of Lindenhurst, and I mean, the water had receded at that point, but you see the watermarks in the homes. They're like 6-8 feet in the air. Like, holy smokes, it's sad. And so we gotta do what we can to protect ourselves, and obviously the state is determined to recapture some land as much as feasibly possible, and to be smarter and elevate homes.
So now that we're almost 10 years after, a decade
Yeah.
since Sandy, and we're still talking about it, we're still feeling the effects. How much progress do you think the town has made in those 10 years? As far
I think
as
we've made a lot. Yeah, it's there's certainly more work that has to be done. But I think for the most part, the leadership has, from all levels of government, they're certainly aware of the problem and the potential of what could happen, and preparing as best as possible to mitigate any future potential weather events like that.
oh gosh, let's hope it doesn't happen again, but we got to be prepared in case it does. You know, so hope's not a plan. We always preach that at PW Grosser, but we sure do. We do rely on it at times, which I think is great. What, in terms of funding, where has the town gotten funding resources to help with its resiliency and maybe getting people to raise homes, or that strategic retreat we talked about, maybe the state buying land and whatnot? Is there still money available to help support these programs?
Yeah, we've gotten funding from federal resources. We're looking for I'm sure you guys follow the whole what's going on in Washington.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes they actually do get things done with the infrastructure package. So we're looking to address some priorities with that as well. We're reaching out to our federal and state representatives, and we're hoping to do some culvert replacements and safety measures, highway measure, resiliency efforts as well. And so we're constantly, looking for ways to address the issues that we've identified, look for funding sources to do that. We're hoping that'll be a source of funds to help us achieve our priorities. All right.
Has the town done any road raising type projects?
Yeah, so that's part of the what we're doing now. We're actually going through some meeting. I was able to attend one meeting in the village. Excuse me, they'll kill me if I said the village. Amity Harbor. It was down at the Amity Harbor Civic Association, and it was talking about elevating roads, elevating homes, raising homes. So it's obviously a lot of money. It's millions, tens of millions of dollars to do something like that. But yes, we're looking at that. We're looking at what resources and funding is available, and how to get that done. And because particularly in that area, if you're familiar with it, you have a lot of they're right on the water. It's right next to Tanner Park. They're just west of Tanner Park, and there's a lot of erosion in that area. It's beautiful communities, and it's we feel for the residents in those areas that they're so close to the water. It's beautiful, it's scenic, and you want to be able to enjoy it. You don't want to have to you shudder every time there's a high tide or there's a significant rain event. So we're trying.
The town has been involved in road raising projects for years. I mean, I first became familiar with them in the early 70s. I was working on the Southwest Sewer District project down in West Babylon. The end of Little East Neck Road was raised, and it was really amazing to watch. I mean, I wasn't involved in that, but I was working in the area. So there's so many things involved with it. It's not just raising the road and the curbs. It's where's the water going to go now onto people's property, and how you're going to deal with that.
Right.
And, interesting.
Yeah.
So, but the town, my point is the town has been at the forefront of that for a long time, and appears to have accelerated it, certainly since Sandy.
Right.
There's a lot of money involved.
Yeah,
a lot of
absolutely.
logistics.
Absolutely.
Huge environmental issue, Sandy. One of the things that I thought was that a little bit surprised me is when Sandy hit, a lot of people had boats down there, and they ended up as far north as like Montauk Highway, but the oil tanks. A lot of people had oil tanks either pop out of the ground or float away, and it was a tremendous problem with spills.
Yeah.
Have you guys thought about any of that stuff? Or you're working with homeowners to help them address, how do I make sure my tank doesn't float away if I am on oil? Or
Yeah, no, definitely we're having those conversations. And to your point, I remember because I was going in with the Red Cross to provide food and literally knocking on doors and giving people MREs and things of that nature because they didn't have any food or limited food sources. And I remember walking down, it was a Bayview Avenue in Amityville, and just kind of like out of sorts to some degree just because of the devastation. And I remember walking, I was like, why is there a boat? Almost on Montauk. I was like, holy smokes, this is crazy. And to see it firsthand is really devastating. So I think it touched all of us on a very personal level, even if we weren't directly impacted. And we're doing our best to ensure that our folks, our constituents, are as prepared as possible, and that we're doing what we can in the town to make sure that people don't suffer unnecessarily.
That is excellent. Great. One other thing while we're talking about the beaches and the water and stuff, something that's been in the paper a little bit lately is Oak Beach.
Yeah.
Right. And those people a lot of them are on private wells or they have a shared private well type of thing for multiple homes. And years ago, PWGC, we were involved with some of the lead and copper studies back in the 90s for the area and whatnot. So we are familiar. But right now, it seems like they're having some contamination issues, and I know it's a concern. And I know the town is absolutely concerned about it. So can you give us an update as to what's going on with Oak Beach? Or
Yeah, so the Oak Beach community, this really affects about 56 homes. It's a unique situation where they, as homeowners, they own the home, but that they lease the land from the town. They have long-term leases, and as a part of the lease, the leasee is responsible for maintaining the wells. So, according to Health Department law, if you have 5 or plus homes, I think it is, or 5 or more homes connected to a private well, it's really considered public well. And that was the scenario there. Even though they had private wells, they were really public wells, which subjected them to testing by the health department. So about 10 or 15 years ago, the county health department was concerned because the wells were contaminated. They encouraged them the residents to make some changes. That didn't happen, and at some point, the town got involved. The county contacted the town and said, "Hey, as the landowner, you guys got to do something, or you're going to be subjected to millions of dollars in fines." So last summer, the town we've put together. We got our staff together, put together a plan, it's about an $8.5 million, maybe $8.8 million, I think, actually project. So we wanted to, reduce the cost to the homeowners as much as possible. So originally the estimates are around about $6,600, $6,700 cost for 30 years to the residents. So as a town board, we made a determination that we wanted to cap their cost at $1,500. But we are looking for other resources to help defray the costs. We understand that, $1,500 is a lot of money, particularly over 30 years. But yeah, it was something that had to be done. It's actually in the design phase is completed. It's they're starting construction, expected to the project expected to be completed, I think, summer of 2023.
Wow. So are they putting in new wells? Are they putting in disinfection? Or
there's
a combination of both? Or
there's going to be a treatment. The town actually donated some land for the treatment facility.
Oh, great.
So yeah, we actually have a meeting coming up, maybe in the next day or so, with some of the residents and staff to address the issue. So we're still out there, plugging away, trying to find some resources. There may be some monies available from our federal resources, our federal representatives, excuse me. But we'll see.
So then will the town be responsible for the treatment system? Like I know like Gilgo, there's treatment. At Cedar Beach, there's some treatment. And obviously the town takes care of that. Would that be the case here, or the homeowner's responsible?
No, I think it's actually the county that's going to be. Yeah. Yep. So because I remember one of the calls we had a representative. I forget the gentleman's name, but he was from the Suffolk County Water Authority.
Okay, I was going to ask if they were going to maybe potentially get involved, maybe take the whole thing over.
Yeah, which is it's if you've ever been, it's a beautiful community. It's great, and so it's obviously anytime you talk about contamination, you're going to make sure that it's being addressed. It's being addressed now, and I think people understand that, but the concern is how can you do it to in a way that reduces the financial burden on the residents there as much as possible.
Excellent. So Dwayne, we touched on this a little bit previously, the infrastructure package from the feds.
Yep.
Right. What are you guys anticipating to see happen with the town of Babylon? Assuming this eventually gets rolled out, it's good that everything was approved, but we've yet to see any money start flowing.
Right.
And the engineering industry, the environmental industry, everybody is trying to gear up for it as best we can. The industry as a whole is very busy right now, and you're going to throw $1 trillion plus worth of new infrastructure. It's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, how do you find that? From a non-engineer perspective, you always hear the term, shovel ready. Is there $1 trillion worth of shovel ready projects?
There are not.
Yeah, that's right.
Absolutely not. I'm sure there's some, but there's not all of it. Not even close. That's probably I'd say 10 years worth of work and investment that would have to go into to doing that.
Generally, the municipalities or the county would have conceptual ideas and sometimes plans even of projects that they had conceived in the past and didn't bring to final design.
Right.
But in some cases, they do where they had money to invest in the plans. But even so, those plans have to be updated. So, the concept of shovel ready is a little bit different.
Right.
But there's plenty of ideas out there how to spend the money.
Right.
And I mean, I know there's a lot of talk about the Oakdale merge, which is not in Babylon, of course. But I was
just having a I was just having a conversation about that 2 nights ago. The Oakdale merge. Wow, that's interesting. You bring
that's a real big deal.
Yeah.
But thinking about Babylon, to my knowledge, roads maybe they need some maintenance overall, and that's an issue all around Long Island. But for the most part, roads are in good shape. There's no new whole concepts that have to be done.
Right.
So you can really focus on parks and beach access and those kind of things, I would assume. With your
right. Yeah, absolutely. So our staff is, we're looking at, emergency preparedness, culvert replacements, installing charging stations, road improvements. The concern, I shouldn't say concern, but what you have to be mindful of is when you're expanding infrastructure, there's a funding that's in place to build it, but there's a maintenance effort after that. It's gonna include more money, budgetary money, is gonna include more staff, and so it's more than just being the recipient of these monies that are coming. You got to plan prospectively. Say, okay, well, how are we going to maintain it? And so that's an important aspect of it. And we've been really good in the town with our budget. Our bond rating is excellent, and we're cutting back expenses and debt where we can, expanding resources and amenities where we find that it's advisable, and so it's really been a great experience to be on the town board, and so I'm having a great time.
For a couple of years at least, Babylon has been probably the leading township as far as being green. Mm-hmm. And what geothermal heating and cooling, which is something we're pretty interested in, is that any of that being considered for municipal buildings or incentives for homeowners?
Yeah, I think I remember going to, and I forget where exactly it was. So my first, I had never heard of geothermal, probably about 6 years ago, and going to it was a project, I want to say in the town of Brookhaven, and I was like, wow, this is amazing stuff. And so I think what the town, county, any level of government, what we have to do is we have to have planners and engineers and staff folks that are keeping up with the technology, keeping up with the times, who are keeping an eye out on our regulations and zoning codes and make sure that we're meeting the challenge of the time or what's available at the time. Because I've seen where it is. Not to be critical, but just as an example, the county executive was very visionary as it addressed the advanced wastewater system program that he wants to put in place. But the health department was kind of like, well, we don't know about these things, and meanwhile the county executive was going to, I think, Maryland and Rhode Island and other places where they were doing these systems, but our statutes and codes didn't really, they weren't really suitable, and sometimes staff is a little resistant when they don't necessarily know what's this about. So I think it's important to have an eye on what's on the horizon and have the foresight to change codes and things to fit that, because the way things were done, 30 years ago is not the same. That's the way it's going to be done, 10, 15 years ago, or even today, obviously, particularly as it relates to cesspools.
Oh, yeah.
And so we're very supportive particularly of that program. We're supportive of that. There, if I recall the statistics, there's about 250,000 homes with cesspools in Long Island, and it's obviously
predominantly in Suffolk.
Right, and in areas in Babylon. That's why sewers are so important, like the Wine-Nash, North Babylon areas, high water table areas. So you can put a shovel in the ground, 18 inches, you're hitting water. So it's a challenge, but yes, geothermal is something I find, I'm not an engineer. I'm somewhat familiar with it. It's certainly something I think that's interesting, and it's the if not the future, it's certainly here to some degree, and we're certainly supportive of that. Yeah.
And along those lines, what about like solar or wind? Is the town interested in those or pursuing opportunities to explore, alternative energy sources?
Yeah, I think we're open to it all. As I stated, we understand the national call. The president has put on renewable energy. Installing charging stations is as I mentioned is a priority for us. That's certainly going to get less vehicles, fossil, fuels, and reduce them. Get more electric vehicles. We have 1 or 2 charging stations at Town Hall. We're looking to expand, and so we're on board. We understand what's at stake. Living on an island, having been devastated by Superstorm Sandy, having seen flooding and issues that in our South Shore lying areas. We understand what's at stake.
Sounds good, because it's something that's near and dear to us, because we're, like you said, we've got the eye on the future. We want to make this place, cleaner, greener, and sustainable for future generations. It's sort of our mission and vision is to, leave this place better than we found it.
Right.
And starting with the fossil fuels, and, I love my truck, but it does like to drink gasoline quite a bit, and I realize eventually I'm going to have to maybe change my thinking here with how I get around town and get down to Gilgo Beach and whatnot. Yeah. But it would be super helpful if I was out surfing for a few hours and I could be charging up my truck while it's sitting in the parking lot at the beach. That would be absolutely fabulous.
Well, that's a great idea. I'll bring that back. Yeah,
we're starting to see towns change standards with respect to parking for commercial buildings, where there'll be a certain percentage that have to have charging stations. And then there's also preferred parking, which a lot of places have now for green vehicles.
Okay.
That's the kind of thing that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. I mean, think about it, right? 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, when I first came in the legislature, to talk about electric vehicles, and it was kind of like something you kind of heard about, but now it's really, if you don't know someone that doesn't own a Prius or a Tesla or some electric vehicle, it's like you kind of a little the odd person out.
Yeah.
So it's become more acceptable. I think people really have bought into the science and understanding what contribution they can make by making a purchase like that. So I think part of these things, because as Paul mentioned, we like our big vehicles, right? So it's like a cultural shift. You got to change people's mind. Hey, what am I people feel like they're losing something. You're really gaining. So
it's for the greater of all.
Right.
The good for all here. The planet and all us citizens here as we breathe cleaner air. And you mentioned climate change, and another thing I can't help but bring up, and probably doesn't pertain to specifically the town of Babylon, but all the shark sightings lately. This is the summer of 2022 here, and we've had a couple people get bit already. And I've been surfing for over 30 years, and prior to last summer, I've seen sharks on Long Island once. All right, last summer I saw 3. Haven't seen any this summer yet. Let's knock on wood. But it's happening again, and I've read an article in the paper. Everyone's attributing to the water's warming up. It's climate change, and what's causing the climate change? It's the carbon dioxide emissions and all carbon monoxide and everything else from vehicles and fossil fuels. And you're right, it's got to be a cultural shift.
Right. Yeah.
And maybe it's because of all the good things we've done that there's more fish, and they are chasing
that was in the article too. And
oh, really?
Yes. Every time I see a school of bunker, my backside puckers. So but it's interesting. And also along the lines, we were speaking a little earlier before the podcast. I brought up municipal solid waste. This is an island-wide problem, and it's going to be a big problem real soon. Yeah. What is the town of Babylon doing? It's at least thinking about this or planning. What's bothering the town about this, and what can you do about it?
Yeah, no, we understand the what's at stake and the regional issues. We're following the different proposals that are going on, and
so hopefully there's a long-term solution here, because it's not going to pile up in everyone's front yard. We got to do something.
Yeah, I think from an environmental perspective, I think from a governmental perspective, you don't want it would be a nightmare. I remember the barges, right? We all remember the barges.
Oh, yeah.
It would be a nightmare if garbage is, we have that scenario again. There's been open discussion about what's going on. The Brookhaven landfill is closing at a certain date. So we have to know, we already should know, we know what the timeline is, so we should be proactive in trying to address it as.
Well, Babylon early on built an incinerator, and
right.
you had, or I don't know whether you still have, an ash fill, whether it's active or not.
Right. Yeah. It's when you, as a typical homeowner, you don't think about, okay, I put the bag out to the pail out to the front, and that's into my responsibility.
It magically disappears.
Just disappears. A orange, green, or blue truck may come by and pick it up, but it's serious, and it's not it's not just something that Babylon's concerned about, or even Long Island. It's all across the country and the world, and so we have to come together, all the stakeholders, and say, what's the solution? And, because it's going to, a nightmare scenario is on the horizon.
As from the environmental standpoint in the industry, I think we're all very anxious to find out what that solution is going to be. And I don't know if we're there yet,
Right.
And the deadline, as you pointed out, keeps getting closer and closer.
Right.
So it's going to get a little sweaty around here.
Yeah, I've spoken to some people over the last few months who have different processes that they are proposing for some aspects of it, and I've heard from these kind of folks for years when I was at Public Works with sewage sludge and those kind of things. Mm-hmm. But they're making the point that what we're doing is making our problem everybody else's problem. by getting it out of this region by truck or train and
Or
filling
boat,
in old
barge.
mines with it. And, and that's even happening. That's a problem now that a lot of people don't realize, that milling streets and taking that material, when they started doing that, that was like a great idea. We could, recycle that material. Very small percentage of that material gets recycled, and it has to be, a lot of it is being taken by barge upstate and filling in old mines, which is adding a tremendous cost to paving that people didn't think about.
Right.
So there's always consequence.
Right. Yeah, I think, when it comes to things like that, we have to really start thinking, okay, like you say, we don't want our issue to become someone else's problem. How are we thinking in a more global perspective, and how to, address these issues that we there's no way to avoid it, but how do we handle it and manage it in a better, more environmentally sensitive way?
You got me back to that old slogan, think globally, act locally, right?
Right.
Absolutely. So along those lines, what's the town doing to encourage like recycling and reuse or repurposing for its residents? So do you have any programs or?
Yeah, we have a recycling program. We're also speaking of Winter Brothers. We have an Earth Day program that we do. It's been suspended for the past couple of years. They actually fund a scholarship, so we have local students that participate and they get a scholarship. So we're encouraging our students to be more educated about the environment. For years now, the town. I think the town has really been a leader. And even dating back to the days of County Executive Blown when he was supervisor, bringing on the Long Island Green Homes program and encouraging residents to, with energy efficiency. But our recycling, we have a recycling plan. I just put out my pails yesterday. I think it was, I forget if it was Plastic Day yesterday. So absolutely. So we're trying to do our part.
When it's collection like that, is it town metal, glass, plastic, or is it all separate?
It's paper and glass and plastic. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So that's convenient for the residents.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little more
in
difficult.
Brookhaven, we can't put out our glass anymore. You're supposed to bring it to a regional center.
Okay.
But it really is more than just the town. It's got to be done on a bigger level.
Right.
And
right.
even bigger than the state. And just in the last few years, so many people are ordering things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Amazon, and it gets shipped in boxes.
Oh, brother.
But there's been a big improvement on how things are shipped, because now they're coming in smaller cushioned bags a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was seeing a tremendous amount of cardboard at my house, and they send something small in a big box.
Right.
Yep.
Never figure that out.
Oh yeah.
But now they're coming in smaller plastic things, and sometimes it is recyclable fiber.
Right. Right.
But it's really got to be done at a national level.
Right. Right. Yeah. No. Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, especially during the pandemic, you would have thought we were running like some warehouse operation. It was like we had all these packages. My wife went crazy. So there's a lot of cardboard but now I've seen the transition too. I just got a package yesterday. I ordered a book and it came in like a little plastic pouch, if you will, and so it's I think we can't afford to not be, at least to have some level of education on what's going on with our environment, so that we can all play our part, even albeit a small part. So that's why I think we're, I like to get our children involved, and I think that's why the Earth Day project and that the scholarship that that Winter Brothers provides is, because I've been to those ceremonies and it's great. The kids are really excited. It's at our town hall park, and to get our next generation more excited and educated about it, and a lot of times they know more about it than the parents do, because they learn about it in school, bringing that information home. But
and that's the way it's got to start. It didn't happen overnight. It's not going to be solved overnight.
Right.
It's a generational thing.
No, well, I just recently learned, you can recycle the aluminum foil that you use. I was watching whatever it is, Cheddar 1 or something on Optimum or Altice, and Really? So I started doing that, as long as it's not too slopped up with like the burrito that I took.
Yeah.
Off of, but you can crumple it up or fold it up and put it in with the recyclables. It's aluminum like the can. So
I've
actually started doing that now.
Wow,
I actually remember from school that aluminum is, at that time, was one of the most recyclable materials as far as, because they can heat it up.
Yeah.
Takes a minimum of effort to be able to reuse aluminum.
So yeah, you learn things at my advanced age. I'm still, it's good. It's really good. No,
There's hope for you yet, Paul.
Yeah, thank you. Well, just to wrap up, DuWayne, do you have anything that we didn't cover that you'd like to mention to the listeners, or to any topics of?
Yeah, no, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. One thing we had talked about prior to coming on was the Suffolk County Land Bank.
Yes.
That was something I had some involvement with doing. What I found was we had at that time about 84 properties throughout the county that we determined through some means that was contaminated. But we didn't want to assume the liability and a lot of them didn't pay their taxes, which through county law will allow us to take those properties and sell them. But if you take possession of them, that means you're going to be liable for the cleanup costs. And so we kind of had a hands-off approach, and it wasn't just Suffolk County. It was a kind of a liability-prone position. But the state law changed, which allowed us to start selling the rights to these properties. So we've worked with the local investors to take control of these properties, get them cleaned up, and now we're revitalizing, downtowns and local communities that probably wouldn't be otherwise revitalized and cleaned up because of the program. So
and those properties are staying on the tax roll. It sounds like.
On the tax roll, yeah,
that's a big thing.
The number of $30 million in back taxes and we recouped. I remember a few years ago we were up to like maybe 15 million of that 30 million we recouped. So once people started getting noticed, hey, we're serious, we're gonna take your property from you. It was at first they were like, yeah, and then people started showing up and they're like, oh, okay, can I get into a payment plan? So we're getting monies, which is good for the taxpayers. But more importantly, cleaning up these properties that are just.
I'm so glad you brought that up. As I mentioned, that's something that our firm has been involved with the county for a number of years now, and it is a really excellent program to incentivize and get these things cleaned up, and it's a tremendous victory for the environment.
Yeah,
in my opinion.
Absolutely. Yep.
So I appreciate you bringing that up, Charlie. Anything you want to add before we close for the day?
No, it's good. All good.
Well, then again, I want to thank our Councilman DuWayne Gregory for joining us today, taking the time to spend with us, and hopefully our listeners have enjoyed and learned something from the conversation. And also, Charlie, thank you for coming in. As always, you're always a big help on the show. And to wrap up, again, I'm your host, Paul Boyce, CEO and President of PWGC Consulting. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us here at the Environmental Echo. And again, lastly, to reach us, www.pwgrosser.com/podcast with any questions, comments, thoughts, or ideas, topics, or even future guests if you guys are interested. And with that, we'll sign off for the day. And I appreciate everyone's time, and I hope you enjoyed listening. Thank you.